Hey guys, this is Brett Young, Taylor Young, and Rod Erb, and you're tuned in to the Be Extraordinary podcast with Urban Young. Real conversations about business, leadership, and personal development.
Welcome, guys, to the Be Extraordinary podcast. I am joined with a special guest, second time on, Chris Welton. And man, am I excited about what's transpired since the first time we got introduced to Chris. A lot of life, a lot of achievement, a lot of fun. We were just talking about that before we hopped on here live. So, man, I'm going to jump right in. I'm going to tell you right now why you'd want to listen, and you're going to want to listen. This man has a crazy story, filled with adversity, filled with successes. Anything from top producing car business, running a car deal, doing the whole thing, transferring to the mortgage business, now becoming a coach, and a high performance coach, and then now becoming an author, and really
best-selling author, by the way.
Best-selling author.
Always got to put that in.
No, yeah. It makes sense. And it's funny. I have a quote from you. I want you to unpack when it comes to the difference between an author and a best-selling author. But man, you shared a little bit of that story with us, and we're better for it. But specific today, it's like this One Jordan book, and you got the gear on and everything. And so tell us about One Jordan, how to connect with high-performing individuals. Where did it come from, man? When did that journey start?
Yeah, so I'm the self-proclaimed king of R&D, which is rip off and duplicate, right? And I saw Bradley make a post on Instagram, and he says, try this technique. Send one shoe and a handwritten note and to connect with individuals. I was like, well, man, I'm a huge Jordan fan, so I'll run with it. So I did it. I DM'd my first person. His name was Damon West. If you guys know who he is, look him up. So,
like Shark Tank, Damon West?
No, Damon West as in the coffee bean story.
Okay, got it.
Him and John Gordon.
Yes.
So I sent him One Jordan, and he loved it. We became friends, and I said, okay, I need to do this again. So then I did it with a guy named Ben Newman, who is the number 4 performance coach in the world. He's my personal coach now. He responded well, and we connected from sending the One Jordan. And essentially the One Jordan, I get their size, I send them a shoe, and the note says, if you'd like the other shoe, please give me a call. And I've got some tailor-made ones I did for different people, like depending on how it was set up. But most of the time, that's the gist of the letter. People are responding. They're DMing me. They're calling me back. They're like, I cannot believe you sent this. This is amazing, right? So I've been able to build that into a lot of these relationships. And I said, you know what? Maybe I should write a book about this. So I contacted a couple different people and got some advice on how I should do it and how I should structure it. So I jumped in and wrote a book. And it has been incredible. I mean, I've only had 2 people. Well, I've had 2 people send the shoe back, which has been interesting. We can unpack that too.
Yeah.
And I've had one person not respond so far, and I know he has the shoe. And I even
mentioned John Gordon, right?
Well, I got John Gordon. He's good.
Oh,
now.
He responded.
Yeah, John Gordon's responded. Okay. I've hit it off with John. I could text John right now. He'll respond to me. But our friend Ed Milet hasn't responded.
Okay.
But I'm still on it. I sent the other shoe to Ed, and I sent an autographed copy of my book. I said, hey, I know you got a lot going on in your life. If we connect at some point, that'd be great, right?
Yeah.
And one of the lessons I learned right out of the gate, though, was after I'd sent out like 6 or 7 shoes and people responded, I'm like, hey, man, I'm really on to something big here.
Right.
Then I had my first rejection. This guy named Dan Martell, he wrote this book called Buy Back Your Time.
Yep, I'm familiar. I've read the book.
And I get a message from his assistant, says, hey, what's your home address? We're sending the shoe back. I was like, man, how dare you send the shoe back? Like, I was like offended, right? And I talked to a friend of mine who knew Dan. I said, hey, what's going on? Like, he goes, well, I'm going to see him next week. Let me see if I can at least get a call with you. I said, great. So he sends me the shoe back. I'm still super offended, which is the wrong way to take it, but I just was. I mean, when you're undefeated and you finally take an L, you're like,
and the personalization that goes into it, a little research. Yep.
Yeah. So I end up getting on a call with Dan Martell, and Dan and I hit it off. It was a great 10-minute call. That was one of the chapters I enjoyed writing the most in the book, because it was like, okay, he's exactly who he says he is. Buy back his time. Yeah. He's not interested in giving his time to people that don't benefit him. What a valuable lesson to learn along the way. Now, Lewis Howes sent the shoe back, wanting nothing to do with me, had no interest, which is okay. That's great. No problem. But it didn't stop me. At first, it kind of did. I was like, okay, well, maybe I've reached the plateau and stopped trying to go after these really super high-level people. Like, why would I do that?
Right.
It's a $150 shoe. Like, why wouldn't I just do that? Look at what has happened so far. And probably the biggest win, though, is something that happened outside the book. And in my opinion, this is the GOAT. And we're not talking about Michael Jordan because we know he's the GOAT, obviously. But this is the GOAT of what I do for a living, which is speaking and writing and coaching. Like the top of the best person to ever do it is a guy named John Maxwell. I sent one Jordan to John Maxwell. John Maxwell called me. He called Chris Welton. Like, he called me. I didn't answer the phone, of course, because it was a West Palm number, and I thought they were going to try to sell me an extended warranty for my car, right? So I just blew it off, and I checked the voicemail, and it says, Chris, John Maxwell, where's my other shoe? I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So I called him right back. Of course, I had nothing prepared. I was very awestruck. I mean, I'm
awestruck listening, right?
He's the man.
He's like you grow up. I don't even know how many books he's written now, but I feel like
90,
I've read
almost 90 books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've read 10 to 15 of his books.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
He's got a new one coming out here in a couple weeks, so there's a plug for John. May 7th, I think, is the next book comes out. So we talk for 10 minutes, just back and forth, just banter, sound like two guys have known each other forever. Mm-hmm. I show up to an event a few weeks after that. Well, we go just before that. He's in an event the next week in Orlando. I couldn't make it. I had some travel going on already. Excuse me. I start getting these text messages and DMs from people saying, hey, John Maxwell's on stage in Orlando, and he's talking about this guy, Chris Welton, and this book called One Jordan, and Chris is the perfect example on how to get out of the people pile.
Oh, my
I'm like,
gosh.
are you kidding me? Like, I had no idea. So 2 weeks later, I go to Nashville, and I meet John at this breakfast they're doing. You know, the breakfast where you pay extra money to meet people, right? So I walk up to John. I said, John, Chris Welton. Hold on a second. He stops the whole room. And he says, everybody, this is Chris Welton, the guy I talk about when I give my speech about the people pile. He takes his phone out of his pocket, gives it to his assistant, and says, I want you to take a picture of me with Chris Welton.
Unreal.
Like, if I never have another shoe work again, I'm
Dream
okay.
come true.
Like, but then it's like, what to do next with that, right? Mm-hmm. Like, what do you do next? So I've got several shoes that have been sent out recently to people. I'm waiting for responses back. But I'm not going to give up on just because I connected with him, it's not over. And I've built several really good relationships with that. Ben Newman is not just my coach, but he's like a super close personal friend of mine. Like, I was just with him in St. Louis 3 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. Had a really nice dinner together. The next day, we were at First Form headquarters. Mm-hmm. If anybody doesn't know who that is, Google that. They're like the top supplement company in the world.
Yeah, monsters. And
I had sent one Jordan a few weeks prior to that to Sal Frisella, who's the CEO. Mm-hmm. So I was able to connect with him as well. But it's been amazing, just the journey. And what I want to share with everybody, I think is one of the most important things is, in October of last year, I decided I wasn't going to finish the book.
So how long had it been going on at this point?
I started in April. I started in April. And
you're 6 months in, and you're just having doubts, busy?
Well, I was like, no one's going to read this. Why am I doing it? Now, my family members might, and I know you guys would buy a couple copies or whatever, you know what I mean? But, like, what's really going to happen here?
Yeah.
So I had to really get out of my own head, because I think that's what happens with a lot of stuff we try to do. We're so close to getting through that, right? Like, so close to a breakthrough, and that's when most people quit. And then I decided to get back into it in November. I pushed December, and then ended in January. We rolled it out in February.
Wow. I mean, I'll tell you, one, it's just amazing that feeling is so common. I can feel that feeling in so many things that people can relate to, where you go, yeah, you know what, who am I to, somebody else put out a better, but whatever it is, the narrative that's circling. Were you in coaching? Why did you pick it back up? Why did you, when October, I'm not finishing the book, and then why'd you start back in November?
Well, I'll connect you with something that is super powerful for me, and it'll go really deep. So I have what's called my burn. Okay, my burn is what my why and my purpose connect and ignite. What is it that keeps me going every day, especially keeps me going after I win? And I don't know if you can see this or not, but on arm, there's a tattoo here that says CJ is watching. CJ is my son that passed away in 2020. And I use that every single day when I get into a spot where I need to do something else. I was at the gym this morning and I was being a baby. I didn't want to do another round of Tabata. I was doing, I'm good. And I look back down and realize that it's not about me. What's going to push me? So I asked myself that question, would my son be proud of me for quitting and stop writing the book? And the answer is no, he would not be. So that's what got me back on track. And it's got me back on track with a lot of things. I mean, just understanding that there's got to be something else to connect with besides just wanting to accomplish something, you know, and not just on the tough days, but on the days you win, right? Because too much when we win, we get seduced by success and we lay back. I'm the king of seduced by success. Like, I could share with you massive wins I've had in my life, and they were all followed by me doing nothing for 6 months. Like, that's just who I've been, like, historically speaking. So connecting with that burn has been something that's kept me on track and pushing me forward. Wow.
Is that tattoo, when did you get it?
So I got that October of last year.
So you're going through this time, and that, you know, it reminds me, is like such a strong and emotional connection that it's hard to even speak on, right? But it's also like this idea of getting leverage on yourself. And we talk about it in business, whether, you know, hey, this is why you hire a coach, this is why you work with somebody. But that's like the ultimate leverage on yourself, is like, that's a different pool than, you know, this other human being that is coaching me. No, that's a pool that I know when I look at that tattoo, I immediately gain leverage on myself, because I know I'm going to experience that doubt. I know I'm going to get in that point where I don't want to do another rep. I don't want to finish the book.
Yeah, and I'll share something else with you too, which has been a big win. I'll pull this up here on my phone if you can see this. I've never shared this with anybody before on any podcast I've been on, but you can see the 5:50 a.m. alarm.
And it says CJ is watching.
CJ is watching, yeah. So I don't push snooze on that one, brother.
Man, that's unbelievable.
When that alarm goes off, my feet are on the floor, right? And I learned that from my coach, Ben. I mean, he's the one who taught me that. And it has been a big difference in the way I show up, right? And when I left my big corporate job in August of last year, which most people wouldn't have left, that was fluff. I did kind of whatever I wanted. I worked hard, but I had results, and I could just do whatever I felt like doing. I knew that I was taking on a massive responsibility to impact others, and they were going to pay me to do that. So I had to find things like my burn and understand that I had to stay on task with those things to bring it every day to the people that are paying me to coach them.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's amazing, man. I also wanted to ask, right, high-performing individuals, you know, if you're listening, you have that person that, you know, if you connected with them or you connected with somebody like them, they are going to enhance your life or your business, right? And so talk to us a little bit about what you've learned about high-performing individuals and why people should consider seeking them out. I mean, you mentioned a couple things just there, the inspiration they draw, the example they've set, the things that you can learn from to save you time, money, etc. But where did that kind of start, and what have you learned about high-performing individuals specifically?
Well, for me, it was I needed to upgrade my circle, okay? And when I decided to leave the mortgage industry and go on to coaching, I needed to create another circle. And then I also needed to get into rooms where Chris Welton may not belong yet or feel he doesn't belong. So the key of that is to build relationships with people who have already been there, right, or already have done it. So that's how I came up with my first Jordan list. I was sitting at an airport in November of 2022. I had a 9-hour flight delay coming back from, I had a speaking engagement in Charleston, and we had a hurricane hitting Florida at the time, so I had to wait for the hurricane to pass to catch my flight home. And I came up with my first ever list of people I wanted to connect with. At the time, I didn't know it was a Jordan list. It was just me writing, hey, I want to connect with these people. Then it turned into a Jordan list. But all those people were people I felt like they were where I wanted to be in certain areas, and they were all different, right? They're all different industries, just different areas. But there was a little bit about each of them that I knew could help me be a better version of me. Like, I didn't want to be Ben Newman. I didn't want to be Coach Michael Burt. Like, I didn't want to be Dan Martell. I want to be Chris Welton, but has gotten some education from these other people. And the truth is, I'm 51 years old, right? So, like, for me to jump into coaching, I had to shorten the learning curve a little bit, right? Like I don't have 20 years. I'm sure I have way more than 20 years, but I have 20 years to build out this practice. So how can I do that? Well, success leaves clues, right? But when you become friends with these people on a high level and they respect you, they help you with stuff all the time. Like we talked briefly before we turn on the recording that I have this summit coming in June 11th through the 14th. And it's called Strength Through Adversity, You're Not Alone. And it's about how I have learned to grow through adversity, but I've got some amazing speakers that are going to be there. Ben Newman's there, Renee Rodriguez, Amberly Lago, Damon West, Clinton Sparks. I don't know if you know who he is or not. He's in the book. He's sold 80 million albums. He's one of the best hip hop producers of all time. He's there. Flex Lewis, 7-time Mr. Olympia. LaShawn Merritt. He was on my podcast recently and had become a friend. He's a 3-time Olympic gold medalist in the 400 meters. Like these are all super high level people that charge amazing amounts of money to speak, and they're doing it for me for free.
That's a test. Okay. See, that tells you right there, everything in that book is real.
Yeah.
And you're a testament to what you're actually teaching. The results are right there, buried in that event.
Yeah. And that's just the start, I believe, right? That's just the start. So how can we continue pushing forward with this? And I call it the One Jordan strategy. We have some more stuff coming out on that to try to teach people to take bold action, right? It doesn't have to be a Jordan shoe, guys. Right. It doesn't have to be that. I did this years ago when I started in the mortgage business. In 2005, I would take this book called Time Traps, and I'd put a handwritten note in there to these high-producing realtors and builders, and I'd say, hey, and a $20 bill, and I would say, hey, this $20 bill is for your time for reading this note. I'm going to call you at 3 o'clock on Tuesday to talk further about the book I sent you about Time Traps and how it's helped me.
I love it.
And I was able to pick up some really big accounts by doing that, right? But it was being different. You know, too many people today are just getting a phone list and they're just making the phone calls, right? Not intentional, just making a phone call, hoping somebody picks up so they can check a box.
Yep. Decent energy, maybe, depending on the day.
Yeah. Yep. And depending on the momentum, right? Oh, I got 2 people that wanted to talk. So then what do? Well, usually they go to lunch after they have 2 wins.
It's right? True. I'm excited. That's the win. Yep. Yeah. And then they add them to the list, even though you don't even know if they're going to take that next call or see. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So this is just getting it a little bit more personal and finding it. I mean, I've had some weird things happen. People have been like, dude, why you want my shoe size? That's really weird.
Yeah.
And my wife asked me the other day, she said, why aren't there any women in the book? I said, wouldn't it be creepy if Welton wanted a woman's shoe size? Maybe it wouldn't, but I feel that it would be kind of creepy if I'm trying to get a woman's shoe size. I just,
call me old fashioned.
Yeah.
But
I don't want to be categorized as a guy who's a weirdo, but doing that. So
that's hysterical.
I thought about maybe writing another book called One Louboutin and just sitting one Louboutin.
So I want to talk about this because you mentioned it, right? Because you think about One Jordan, it's like, you don't have to do the exact same, although it works.
Do it.
Right?
Yeah,
do
it. That's why I wrote the book.
Yeah, and then by the way, send the book with it. I mean, goodness, there's a million ways to go about it. I love how you talk about ripping off and duplicating, and you took what Bradley did, but then you
let me go back to that just real quick. So just so you know, Bradley's never done it.
Okay.
Never did it. So as I'm doing this, I'm in Miami last summer, and I go to this mastermind I'm in with a guy named Renee Rodriguez, who's an amazing author and a friend of mine. And we sit down, and we're just having lunch before the event. And I said, hey, I've got a book coming out. Will you write the foreword? He's like, that's amazing. I would love to write the foreword. What's it about? So I tell him about the story, and he goes, where'd you hear that at? And I said, well, I saw Bradley post it. He goes, I'm the one that told Bradley about that?
Get out of here.
I'm like, that is amazing. I said, have you ever done it? No. So I'm the only one that I know of that did it to this point. I'm sure somebody's done something similar, but it worked, right? David Meltzer, I don't know if you have David Meltzer or not, but David, if you don't, you got to check David Meltzer out. He's probably one of the most genuine people in the world. He owned the sports agency that the movie Jerry Maguire was written about.
Okay.
But I One Jordaned him. And when you see him speak, like he does these lives all the time from his house, and the One Jordan shoe sitting on the thing behind him, right?
So good. Yeah, and by the way, is One Jordan, it's a verb now, right? I One Jordaned him.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. No, I love it. But you filter it, you make it authentically yours. So if you're listening to this and you're trying to connect with somebody high performing to get out of the people pile, I think about the cold calling thing. You make so many dials, you connect with somebody, right? You got the voice that's a little bit receptive. what do I do next? Now that I have, what do I do next to stand out, right? I've already gotten, and maybe that's the part of a top performing anybody is to say, what do I do next? And that's where that strategy, you don't have to one Jordan your entire 300 people on your list, but then once you go a little bit deeper, once you see somebody you want to connect with further, that seems to me to be super relevant.
Yeah. So in the book, there's actually, you can scan a QR code and it gives you the download to create your own one Jordan list. So it's the principles that I use to create my list. Yeah, no, it's not a mass. We're not sending it to everybody. That's, first of all, that's not going to be genuine, right? I mean, how are you going to get 300 people's shoe size? I mean, I guess you could get it, take a lot of time, but find the people, the elite of the elite you want to connect with, the people you think that are going to tell you no.
Yeah. And that list makes you a little uncomfortable, like, because the people that you're referencing, which is crazy, I meant to ask you about, these are not like just successful people. These are like kind of larger than life, extremely successful, extremely busy public people.
Yeah.
You know, so this is not, you know, you connecting with a local successful business owner, although, you know, that's cool.
Yeah.
This is like the #1 podcast in the country, in our space. You're trying to connect with the person, and you're doing it.
Yep.
John Maxwell, like, right? Those aren't normal leader. No, he is like leadership. He's synonymous with the word leadership.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, I can't believe it when I'm going to say this. Like, yeah, I like literally, I can text John Maxwell. He's in my phone, and he would respond to me.
Can I ask you a question? You mentioned them doing the event, and by the way, guys, the event's free.
Yes,
June 11th through the 14th. Gosh, I know I'll be doing it, man.
Yep.
What a gift for you to give that, and the speakers that are going to be a part of that. By the way, Instagram, One Hand at a Time, is Chris Welton.
Yep.
Incredible podcast. I just listened to one this morning on the way in with Michael Burt, One Hand at a Time podcast. So definitely find Chris, and he'll give more information about the event. But, you know, specific to the event, why are you doing it? Why are you doing it? To showcase what you've learned? What are you looking to give the audience?
Yeah, so the main reason is to do something to help memorialize my son. He's the reason why I decided to do it. And then I feel I have a responsibility to share with people the adversity of infant loss. When I speak, that's what it's going to be about. Because there wasn't that for me when it happened. Like, I didn't have anybody to connect with. So that was the first thought of it. I'm like, okay, well, but there's so many other major adversities people have faced in life. Why not get people that have been successful to get on here, and maybe they can relate to someone else, or maybe their audience has somebody that needs to hear something from Chris Welton, and make the barrier of entry nothing. Make it zero, right? Let's just get on here and do it. I've got some good sponsors and stuff that are helping me cover the cost of all that, you know, the editing and all that stuff, because it's just not cheap to do that stuff. But it's not going to cost them anything to get on there, right? And it's not a profit center for Chris Welton. I'm not going to make any money. If for some reason I grab some more sponsors and it goes above the number, then I'm going to give all of it back to what we call as the Finley Project. And the Finley Project is Noelle Moore. She lost her child, Finley, when she was a toddler, like almost a newborn, and opened up the Finley Project to help moms who have gone through infant loss. And she was on my podcast just recently, and she was one of the people that helped my wife. She's one of the speakers on the event. And the cool thing about that is I approached her a few months ago and I said, hey, I really think we should create something for husbands, for the dads too, because there just wasn't much there. She goes, we're actually working on some of that. Would you want to be involved? I'm like, yes. Like, please help me be involved in that, because I think that I could be just to help other people there. Because you really feel alone as a husband or a dad going through that. Like, you need to be there for your spouse, but there's not that other person to really talk to.
Right. Yeah. You know, it's amazing. You think about how full circle. The reason I was born is because of infant loss. I mean, my parents wanted 2 kids. They had my older brother, Brett, and they had my, what would have been sister, Whitney, and she was delivered as a stillborn. Yeah. And when I was 6 or 7 years old, I remember it's always been something that's I feel very connected to, because I asked my parents, I said, so you're telling me that the reason I was born is because you guys lost Whitney? And of course, I think at the time my parents lose it, and they're saying yes. And now, full circle, our daughter was the first, young girl in the family, and her middle name's Whitney.
Love
right?
it.
And so that stuff hits really, really full circle.
Yeah.
And I know you just had your son Leo, and we were talking about what a blessing that was.
Yeah. So we're extremely blessed to have Leo. So CJ was named after me, Christopher Jr. Leo is Leo Christopher after his brother. And, man, like I said earlier, I'm 51, and he was born December 12th of 2023, and it was not easy. And I'll share this story with you guys real quick. The morning we were supposed to go to the hospital was about 6 weeks before he was supposed to be born, but my wife was having some complications, so they wanted to deliver him a little early. They were going to deliver him the next day, and they had a special team coming in to do the delivery. And that morning, my wife had some major issues, and we had to call an ambulance to take her to the hospital. So I'm following the ambulance from Lake Mary, Florida. For those of you who are in Central Florida would know, on I-4, I'm following the ambulance all the way to Winnie Palmer. And I'm calling anybody that'll answer the phone because I need to talk to somebody to keep my headspace right. Because the only thing I can think about is, once you have PTSD from why can I not say it right? Yeah. PTSD from losing a child. The only thing I think about is I'm going to lose both my wife and my child. Oof. And we get to the hospital, and they stabilize her, and then they check and make sure and he has a heartbeat because you just don't know, right? Yeah. Like that was the first thing they had to stabilize her, and they said, look, we're going to deliver him the next day. We're going to keep monitoring her. We can do it today if we need to, but the team's not here. The next morning, they take her into the delivery room. I go in. There's over 20 doctors in there because of the type of delivery that had to be done. He was delivered.
20 doctors.
20. It was.
I've never even heard of that.
It looked like something out of a movie.
Yeah.
I mean, she had this placental abruption where it had grown into the uterine lining, and the fear was that she was going to hemorrhage. I mean, it's just such a great deal that they had went through her thigh and her femoral artery, and they put in a balloon that if she started bleeding, they would stop the blood flow. Like that's how insane. For real it was. And so he delivered him, and he's like, looks great. He's 6 weeks early, but he's still, just a big, beautiful kid. And he's crying, and everything's great. And then they keep her on. They take him, and I go out to this waiting area where they kept monitoring him and stuff. And then she was on the table for another 4.5 hours. Mm-hmm. And let me tell you what a trooper, just a beast my wife is. She refused to let them put her under. Just keep her numb. Because she knew that if she went under, her recovery time would be 2 or 3 more hours before she would get to spend time with our son.
Wow.
I mean, what a boss, dude. That's
crazy.
Yeah, she is just a machine and loves our son so much. But, man, it didn't feel like that's how it was going to go down. It was just, it was really
yeah. That half-hour drive behind the ambulance, you're talk about fear and doubt flooding in, right? That had to be the, oh my gosh,
yeah.
How can this, and you're already there in your head of these worst-case scenarios. Great job by the team of 20 doctors to do what they did. That's a miracle.
Job. Yeah, they did an amazing job. And Winnie Palmer, they're just...
Yeah, they're amazing.
They're the real deal.
Yeah.
They really are. So didn't want to go on a negative, but it's a positive note is he's great. She's great. I literally just left them. They just did a 4-mile run with him in the stroller.
Yeah. And I got to get you out of here on time because I know you have lunch with him.
I do have lunch with him today. Yes. Today's a nice lunch day with the family. But
I want to ask you specific to, once you connect, right? So once you get the response from the high-performing individual, they don't just do events for free for you from there, right? They don't just because they don't become your friends. I think that's a subtlety when you're pursuing relationships of whether it's etiquette, whether it's patience, whether it's understanding where you can provide value, but not be cheesy about it, be real and authentic. Take us through that for somebody listening and say, okay, I've got their attention, Chris. I got the busy person that's now going to take my meeting. Where does that go as far as developing friendships?
Yeah, I think part of it is you get, part of it is you get what I call co-signed by other people in the industry. Ben Newman is a very reputable person, right? So Ben, people know that I'm in with Ben.
Yep.
They know that Chris isn't just some guy who's trying to mooch off them or get something for free. Mm-hmm. So everybody that's in the book, except Dan Martell because he doesn't like Jordans, but everybody that's in the book, what I did was I had these custom boxes made, and it was the cover of the book, right? And then they would open that box up. It looks like a giant shoebox. They opened the shoebox up, and in there was a pair of custom one-of-one, never, no duplicate in the world, Jordans, made specifically for them for being in the book. And my friend Anthony Ricciardi, he wrote one of the quotes on the book, but a personal friend of mine, just incredible artist out of Toronto, world renowned, does art shows in Dubai. I mean, he's like the guy. And he custom made all those Jordans for me. Like did his thing on those Jordans. He doesn't do shoes. That's not his thing. He does $2 million murals. Like that's who he, you know what I mean? But we've become friends from another friend, and we just have been really close. And I asked him what he thought about that idea, and he goes, "Oh, let's do it." Right. And then he did all those shoes for free for me. Like I was planning on paying a lot of money for those shoes.
Yeah, that's insane.
He did them all for free for me. So I was gifting them again, had the book, right, in there, a nice handwritten letter in the book. I sent it to him. And then I'm going to ask. I'm giving, then I'm going to ask. Mm-hmm. And you can tell me no, it's okay, right? Like I had one guy commit, and then he backed out, a guy in the book. I won't say who it is because he's just a great guy. Mm-hmm. But don't be afraid to ask, man. You know, don't be afraid to ask.
Yeah, when does that ask come? Like, I mean, obviously
it's different for each person.
It's not a science.
It's different for each one. Like, you just feel comfortable. Like, you know, if you're on my podcast, because most of them are on my podcast and we're vibing, and I'm like, you know what, man, I got this thing coming up. It's 10 minutes. I'd love to have you on there. I think it'd be valuable, and this is why I'm doing it. And most of them are like, yeah, man, I'm in.
There's got to be a tie-in to why you're doing it, too. I mean, there's got to be an understanding of, like, whether it's energy or I can understand that this guy's got good intent, right? This is not somebody asking me to do something. You know, obviously, you want to grow your following. You know, you want to grow your impact, but your intent seems to matter a ton.
Yeah, the intent is a big deal, and people want to help other people. They just do. And then I think that they know that I'm the same way. And, like, Amber Lee Lago, who's one of the most dominant female speakers on the circuit right now. She's got a show called the Amber Lee Lago Show. Like, she was on Ed Milet's podcast a few months ago, if that gives you kind of idea who she is. Her best friend is John Gordon's wife, like really dialed in. And I actually flew to Dallas a couple months ago and was on her show. But I was at an event with Ben in October, and one of the guys there was a local guy here, and he's like, "Hey, you want to join us for dinner tonight? We got some of the speakers coming up." So I'm like, "Yeah, let's go." So 12 of us are at a table, and Amber Lee Lago's across from me. So we start talking and hit it off. We find common ground. She decides to meet me in Dallas a few weeks later at another event I was going to. And then we just became friends.
Yep.
And I told her, like, recently she had a big event in Dallas. And I said, just so you know, every time you run an event, if someone bails, I'm at the event, or you give me 24-hour notice,
I'm there.
I'm here. And I said, you don't got to pay me either. I'll come do it.
Yeah. And
she actually saw me speak in Dallas last year. I was at an event, Rene Rodriguez's big event. And he's on stage and he says, "Hey, we have a guest speaker. He doesn't know he's speaking. I'm going to pull him out of the crowd. He hasn't prepped, but I want to show you what this guy's done in the last year." And next thing you know, this video starts rolling. It's me, right? I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" So he pulls me out of the crowd, and I spoke, and it went well. And then Amber Lee, after me, she's like, "You're definitely in my rotation. Like,
wow.
Let's figure this out." So,
man, good for you. But, you know, I do think there's an acknowledgement of kind of understanding her life, what may be valuable, a way that you can give because she gave to you, and then offering that, and then delivering. And then there's something about setting an expectation and meeting it that builds trust with people. And they go, yeah, this Chris Welton guy is who he says he is. Yeah. I've seen that. Okay, and now this person knows him. So I think all those things seem to run together. I also want to go back to something you mentioned when we first started about why and how you stopped writing the book and then kept writing the book, and there was that doubt. Yeah. Sometimes I think with connecting with high-performing individuals, maybe you can speak to this, is there's that fear. There's that unworthiness of like, well, you know, they're busy. Like, one, where does that come from? How do you get past that, you know, for the person that, and it's all relative, right? It may be, hey, I'm an insurance agent. I'm looking to connect with top performing mortgage offices.
Right.
And there's the whale that I know is, I respect, I follow him, but I don't want to give him a call. I'll give these other people a call. They're the smaller fish. What gets people past that to go, you know what? Yeah, man, like you're good enough to call them. You know, what would you speak to there?
That's a great question. Look, I'm just not afraid to ask, because and what's the worst thing that could happen? They say no. I mean, they're not going to reach through the phone and beat you up.
Yep.
Like the truth is, if you're in sales, you're listening to this, because most of you probably are, your job doesn't start till someone says no anyways.
Sure.
Like if everyone said yes, you guys would have a kiosk in the lobby and people would just come in and push buttons and get insurance, right? Yep. That's just how it would work. Yep. No offense to the salespeople, but that's how it works. So for me, it was like, if they say no, yeah, it hurts. Of course it does. But let's figure out a way to get through that. And then I started realizing that a lot of these high performers, they say yes and no based off what their assistants say to them, right? Or what other people in their circle say.
Yes.
So find common ground. I'm super kind to the assistants. Like my email structure to them when I'm communicating is like, I know that you must be one of the best assistants on the planet because of who you're taking care of. Mm-hmm. I can't imagine the burden you have on your shoulders every day to make sure his schedule works.
Right. I
would love to figure out a way to get involved in that. You know what I mean? Like, be very complimentary to them, but authentic. Don't be cheesy about it. So that's helped me get in there. But I just haven't been afraid of them saying no. I'm sure there's people that laugh about Kristen's one Jordan or whatever. Hey, cool. That's great.
Yeah.
But it's worked for me. You know what I mean? It's worked for me.
Yeah. It's funny. It's, there's a time I was thinking about, we were connecting a new market and we knew one of the top LOs in another market. And, these circles are small. And so I was connecting with a guy and we're having a fine conversation, but I could tell he's kind of looking around. He's not very interested to talk to me. And this is a couple years back. And somehow organically, a mutual friend came up and you should have seen his mood shift. Once he found out that I knew that person and that person knew me well, it was like, oh my gosh, okay, we'll connect after, right? It's a total reversal of his interest. And now all of a sudden he's interested in what, and it was really interesting. So the story you tell about, working through networks, and there's got to be a part of it that you probably don't jive with everyone. You probably can't fake it, right? There's probably certain people that, like Ben Newman's been for you, that you go, you know what, man, we just dig the same stuff. Like what he's serving up, I'm eating, and vice versa. And so there's this natural connection that I'm just going to go deeper with that person. And if I go deeper with that person, then I'm going to access the people that he's deeper with, right? I don't necessarily need to go find another Ben Newman. Maybe I can just kind of work through that network and get to know who he knows,
Yeah, I mean, the truth is, I found a lot about the people by sending them the shoe, and some of them we don't connect. There's a few people that I haven't had any conversations with since the first conversation. It just wasn't the right fit. They weren't who I thought they were for me. Not saying they're a bad person, but what I was looking for to connect with and people I wanted to be involved with. Right? And I talked about building that circle, right? Creating a new circle. Well, I've created this new circle of people, and I did it with intentionality and the people that I wanted to be around. And I go to these high level masterminds. I'm going to Arizona next month to this it's these people in the room are like next level.
So as you get closer to people like that, right? And for the listener, it's like, this is the person you follow on Instagram that you love their stuff. And you go, man, wouldn't it be nice if I was on a private jet with that guy going to that place and doing that seminar. As you get closer, what are some of the biggest aha moments from a high-performing, busy individual that you go?
I got a really good one.
There you go.
So this happened to me at an event, and I say event. I go to a lot of events, but I'm intentional. When I go to an event, I don't necessarily go to because who the speakers are. I go to see who's going to be in the rooms with me. Mm-hmm. I always go VIP because that's the people I want to meet. I always fly first class, not because it's what I can afford most of the time, but it's because the guy sitting next to me can't afford it. And I've learned a lot of lessons on a 5-hour flight next to a guy holding the Wall Street Journal, right? But when it comes to this event I was at, and I was the only one in the room that didn't fly there in a private jet. Okay?
That's a heck of an event.
It was. There's only 15 of us. And we're on the very top floor of the Palms Hotel in Vegas. We have this massive suite for this event, just us in this room. And I'm listening to these people. And at lunch, I'm standing next to one of the guys, and I said, hey, nobody has talked about interest rates. Nobody's talked about the White House. Nobody's talked about the economy or anything. Can you help me understand what's going on? He looks right at me, and he said, Chris, that's what people who fly coach talk about. And I was like, whoa. He goes, and I don't mean that in a negative way. He goes, the people are flying coach because all they want to talk about is stuff they can't control. He said, what I talk about is the things I can control. He said, what I do is I train my people and teach my people to handle the things they can control, not the things they can't. I don't care who's in the White House. I don't care if interest rates are 14%. Yeah, business will be tougher, but I'm still going to do well. He said, you don't realize how thin the line really is between the guy in coach and the guy flying a G550. And it's all believing and understanding what they can control. And I was like, dude, I'm going to call that the billionaire mindset. So I share that with people all the time, but that's amazing to hear that.
That hits so hard because two things, right? Being in the right room matters, right? You're not going to get that information in a different room, but then also him explaining that the line is thinner than you think, right? But it's just this shift in thinking that once you move that, right? We could be talking about for hours. All you talk about is the whiteout. All you talk about is the interest rate. All you talk about is the market and how you're going to strategically navigate it, right? Instead, it's like nobody's talking about it. Why?
No, zero talk about that. And the cool thing was about in that morning when I got there, of course I was super nervous. What am I going to bring with these guys? Like you're in a mastermind, you're supposed to bring something with you, right? It's like you showed up on snack day, didn't bring snacks. Like, you know what I mean? Like you got to bring something, right? So in the first 45 minutes, there was a question that they were going through stuff. And I go, I have an answer. I'll raise my hand. And half the guys in the room were like, man, I've never thought about it that way before, right? Like it was like, oh my gosh, I just brought value, right?
Yeah.
So I brought value. Sure. Let's go. I've got more of these, right? So regardless of where those people are at, you have value to bring to them.
Right.
Okay. You have value to bring to them. And if they don't feel that you do, then they're not valuable for you. Right. I've heard it called reverse mentoring, right? Like find people that are below where you are in business and have conversations with them too, because they've got things to learn as well. Right. We're not always going to learn from people who are above us. And I love that. I mean, I get in those rooms and now I'm becoming a respected person in those rooms. Right. The event we're going to, I have this mastermind thing I'm doing in Puerto Rico in October. And one of the guys I talked to about the billionaire mindset, he lives here local. Well, I'm pretty sure he's going in October. Guess how Chris is getting there?
Yeah, the jet.
On the G550, right? Like that's how that's going to go down. Because he was like, anytime I go to anything, I'm going to let you know, Chris, and you can always fly on my jet with me.
Yeah.
I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
Not only does that save me $2,000 in plane tickets, but I also get to fly on the G550.
Which is ironic, right? You're buying the first class ticket to be around somebody, and then now you get to be on the jet. And
so, you know, I mean, it's been that part has been amazing. And getting into those rooms with the people, listening, being yourself, you know, be authentic, man.
Yeah.
Don't go in there and try to be, unless you are the Showtime guy, you know what I mean? Don't try to be that person. Be yourself.
So that's another subtlety. And I think this all ties back to, okay, you have their attention. What happens next? I think being yourself in those rooms while also thinking of their needs. But at the end of the day, you got to be you, right? And you got to be unique to your experience. People will sniff out if you're talking about stuff that you've either never done or you've never been close to doing. Yeah. And they're like, this is phony. Like, this is cheesy. And I don't really know what it is. He's saying all the right things. I'm going to go to another conversation. And maybe that's the reverse mentoring part, is like everyone does have something to give, and everyone does. And that's why like some people are like in a saturated world of podcasting, if you want to call it that. Although I heard that like only 1% or like the top 10% of podcasts get past 10 episodes. Like everyone else. Did you hear that stat?
Yeah. I'm on year 2 of mine right now, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, which is awesome. I've listened to a few over the last couple of weeks, and I've loved them. But to the point, right? Just the stereotype and the perception of like, oh, it's another podcast. Like, no, there's an audience for every person. Like your unique life experience, everything down to CJ, everything down to what you've done professionally, how you grew up. There's somebody that you are meant to connect with that is for you. And I think a lot of people miss that because I think they're after the people that are on the jets or in those rooms, and they want to mirror exactly who they are. Not like, hey, I want to learn from what has made them successful principles wise, and I want to connect with the people they want to be connect with. But at the end of the day, I got to be me. And I heard you talk about that a lot. So bring us into that as being Chris Welton within that and kind of finding your unique voice. Yeah,
well, I wanted to be Ed Milet, right? That was what I wanted to be. Actually, I wanted to be Andy Frisella several years ago, and then I realized that's not who I wanted to be. Yeah. And
just on certain days.
On certain days, yeah, on certain days. It's so funny because I just saw him when I was at first firm headquarters, and he walked the other way. It was just hysterical. But anyways, but I was with his brother. He just like turned around and walked the other way. That's all right. But for me, the realization came from my wife when she told me, I married you because you're Chris Welton. I didn't marry you because you wanted to be this guy, this guy, this guy, and this guy. And when someone cares about you that much to tell you that, then it's time for you to pivot and really figure out who you want to be, right? Who you are and who I am. And I say this one of my things I do when I get on the stage, I'm the son of a drug addict, right? I'm a survivor of infant loss. Mm-hmm. I've had failed marriages, failed businesses. I was born with a limb difference. But I'm also a guy who's a massive learner who wants to impact people every day, right? That's my thing. Like, if one person can listen to this podcast and go, oh my gosh, one Jordan, great. Oh, wow, I suffer from infant loss, this. Then I've done what I want to do and what I'm here to do, right? Mm. And I don't need to be the Ed Milet's or everybody else, but I do learn from him. I listened to his podcast on the way here when I was stuck in traffic on I-4 in the express lane of all places. Can you believe that?
I can.
Yeah. So, but it just really comes down to being authentic and being yourself. You're being your true authentic self. And the space I'm in now, the coaching space, seems to be a very crowded and over used terminology or whatever you want to call it. But I know that there's no other Chris Welton, right? Like I'm not Ed or anybody else. I'm Chris Welton, and I will only relate to the people that need a Chris Welton in their life, right?
And by the way, I think that what you just mentioned is a limiting belief that sometimes I have. Look, we're in the insurance business, right? So it's one of the oldest businesses. I think it's the oldest business in the United States outside of banking, right? So like there's a lot of businesses that are saturated.
Yeah.
But there is a unique experience that I feel like our business is providing in the marketplace. And sometimes it's very easy to get caught up and say, well, yeah, should we do that? Somebody's already done it or they've done it this way. And that feels like that limiting belief of doubt that almost kept you from finishing One Jordan, the only book that you could have finished, right?
Yeah. And I had a guy say to me recently, he's like, I don't want to do the One Jordan thing because you've already done it and it's kind of gimmicky. And I was like, okay, well, 5 years from now, you will still be saying the same thing and doing the same thing you're doing. Like, just because other people are doing it doesn't mean they're going to do it the way you're doing it, right? Like,
agree.
My dream is to be a keynote speaker at Amway, right? With 20,000 people. And I think I will be there.
No doubt.
But I could easily say, oh man, I can't get there. Like, there's so many people. Like, Ben Newman coaches Jalen Hurts. Like, that's one of his one-on-one clients, right? Like, Ben Newman coaches Google. Like, just, I mean, like, so like, I'm like 70% of his business is not athletes. He's known for athletes, you know. He was the mental toughness coach for 2 national championship teams at Alabama, right? I mean, like but that's, most of his stuff is in the financial services and the other spaces. But I could easily say, well, I can't do those things because Ben did this, Ben did that. You know, Ben's never had a set of shoulder pads on in his life. Okay, well, Chris Welton has, right? So I have a little more advantage if I want to talk to football players.
There you go.
But just go after this thing that you want to do and you want to be. And I saw this thing from Mel Robbins yesterday, who I absolutely love. And I don't have it all down because I thought I had it and I was going to share it. But it said something about start a business, write a book, chase your dreams, do these other things. And after I read this list, I have done all those things since 2016. And I was like, okay, that's pretty good. I felt good about myself at that point. But then I was like, okay, now what next, right? What am I going to do next?
Well, and it's funny, I was listening to your podcast with Coach Michael Burt, and I was talking about the difference between this balance between chasing success, chasing what's next, and then almost like this pursuit. And pursuit seems a little bit more healthy, a little bit chasing for me. When I've gone through it, I can feel the difference. I'm chasing this external validation, or I'm chasing this thing that I'm really chasing this feeling that once I get it, I'll think I'll feel differently. Pursuit is like this fun, playful, hard process that I could do forever. And you talked about on that podcast, the difference between high performance and how it's important to recover and rest and not go 100 all the time, but book time, and that you've learned that lesson. So how do you dance with chasing versus pursuit? if you will?
Yeah, so I can go back historically and see where I chased, and it cost me a lot of money and a lot of relationships. I always had this thing when I was young, I'm going to get a Mercedes, right? I'm going to get this Mercedes. And in 2002, I got this black CLK 55 AMG Mercedes.
Macked out.
I mean, I'm from Kingswood, baby. If people around here, they know where that is. I grew up in Kingswood. Like, there's no Mercedes, at least when I was a kid, there was no Mercedes-Benz in Kingswood. But I said I was going to have this car. And I got it, man. And I drove it for a couple of days, and then I was like, man, this doesn't feel that good. I mean, it's okay, but I want a CL 600, right? Like, I'm like so all of a sudden, yeah, just within a couple of days, I was like, okay, well, what's the next thing? I did that so many times throughout my life. And I don't remember how I learned it. A lot of it was from probably losing things along the way, but it became more about who I became on the way to that thing than it was who I became when I got it.
Yeah.
And man, every day, and I'm not perfect, but every day I try to become a little bit better at something in my life, right? Right now I'm taking Babbel. I do Babbel Spanish 15 minutes a day, right? Like I spoke Spanish pretty regularly growing up in high school. I took it for 4 years, but that was 30 plus years ago. Mm-hmm. But now I'm just trying to do that to get a little better at that piece of my life and do these other things along the way. Like someone asked me the other day, are you writing another book? And I said, yeah, I'm going to write another book. I know exactly what I want it to be. But it's not about who I became when the book came out. It's about who I became writing the book. The lessons I learned writing the book, right? Like you asked the difference, what's the difference between an author and a best-selling author? Well, my best-selling author piece was because my publisher is just amazing, and she understands how to break algorithms on Amazon. So we released our book one night. The next day, I was a bestseller in 6 categories.
I've been following along. I've been amazed.
6 categories. Yeah. Like what? Like I woke up and there's all these messages from Amazon. Congratulations, right? So,
how did Amazon get my number?
Yeah, right. So the difference is having the right people around you to create that and make that happen. When it comes to the bestseller piece, but man, just it's about who you become along the way. And you talk about rest. Yeah, rest is super important. I wear an Oura ring now, and I'm tracking that, so I'm really trying to get behind the science of that, which is really interesting.
No, that's great, man. And one thing I do want to share as we kind of wrap up and be respectful of your time. I could do this for hours, and maybe we'll do it again, man. I would love to because there's so much to learn. But something that you talk about walking the walk. I was listening to you're somebody that walks the walk. Like when I'm following people, knowing you and the way that I'm watching, I'm like, okay, this dude is in the gym. Excuse killer. Okay, wow, this guy's right. And now he's writing a book. I'm looking at it like, wow, it's amazing. So every step of the way, you're somebody that now you have the family side and you're balanced, like you're walking the walk, which is fun. But there was Alex Hormozy, who's now larger in life as far as content goes. He mentioned something about that always sticks with me. Is like the book that about how to get a 5-star review only has 14 5-star reviews on Google, right? I don't need to read the book to know that the stuff doesn't work. One thing that you can share about your book with the event and everything you have going on June 11th through the 14th, this book works. I mean, what this book and the philosophies within it work, and its proof is in the pudding on what you're experiencing right now. So I don't think there's a bigger compliment than that to know that, hey, guys, like this isn't just theory. I've done this enough to know that these relationships I didn't have, I now have. I'm involved in this coaching and speaking. I wasn't. And that's just really, really exciting. And I can't wait for the listener to get it.
Well, thanks for that. I appreciate that. I mean, that means the world to me that somebody like you would say that I walk the walk, because I don't see that a lot of times about myself. You know what I mean? So that means a lot to me. And yeah, the book works. The strategies work. In the coaching space, I want to just cover that real quick. If you're going to hire a coach, that's great. You should be coached. I believe everybody should be coached. And make sure it's somebody that's done something. Mm-hmm. There's too many 25-year-old life coaches out there that are selling their plan or whatever, their strategies. Make sure that your coach shares their losses with you too. Mm. I'm very vulnerable with my clients. I'm like, I sucked yesterday. Like I'll tell them, like I was not good yesterday. Yeah. But make sure you're listening to people that have been there and done it before. And it doesn't have to be the same space you're in. Like I coach people in spaces that I've never been in. I'm not a land developer, but I coach a guy who's doing 9 figures developing land now. but I went through the business strategies and the team building and everything else that he needed to help get to where he needed.
Yeah, it almost seems like, what is the thing that you're looking for in coaching?
Yeah.
And then does that person allow me to get closer to that thing, given their unique set of experiences, kind of like we were talking about. And I was going to ask, like, who are you looking to partner with? Because when I'm sure coaching, you're not looking to coach everyone. I'm sure there's fits.
Definitely not.
You want to run the other way, right?
Yeah, definitely not. I'm first of all, I'm not a therapist, okay? Because that's what seems like some of the clients want to be a therapist. I'm like, therapists are a lot cheaper than me, and I'm not a therapist. You know, I look for people that are trying to get from A to B, and whatever their definition of A to B is, we define that pretty quickly. But someone who's willing to put in the work and be disciplined. I fire clients, not all the time, but I fired a few this year because they weren't putting in the work.
Sure.
Like, I'm not going to keep pouring into you when you show up to the calls and you're not getting it done, or you don't show up to calls or whatever. Right. I'm here to help people grow and get outside of where they currently are, because I've had a lot of success doing that with myself and a lot of success doing that in spaces of companies I've run. The other thing is if you're going to hire a coach, make sure your coach is coached.
Yes.
I was talking to somebody the other day, and he goes, yeah, I've got so many clients. I'm like, who's your coach? Oh, well, you know, I'm like, what? How do you get to where you need to go? So make sure your coach is coached. I do have something really cool that's coming out in May. So if you follow me after this, it's gonna be rolling out May 9th. It's the first day. We're gonna have actual group coaching. I'm gonna do these special calls it's a lower barrier of entry for people cost-wise to get in. We're gonna do 2 calls a month. It's 30 minutes of TED Talk, essentially, me going over strategies and concepts each call, and the next 15 minutes is Q&A. Mm-hmm. So we're going to do that. We're going to roll that out. It's only $2.99 a month, which I was talking to some of the other people I work in circles with that want to come aboard. They're like, that's way too cheap. I said, well, good.
Yeah.
Good. Then that's what I want it to be, right? So that'll be rolling out. We're really excited about that. I've had a lot of people ask me about that because I only have so much bandwidth for one-on-one coaching. Mm-hmm. I've got a few spots for the right people right now, but I'm not looking to just blow that up. And some people just want to be group coached, right? They want to have that kind of stuff and go from there. But that is something I'm rolling out. May 9th will be our first ever call.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. Congratulations. And yeah, one hand at a time. Follow Chris on Instagram, podcasts, reach out about coaching if you're interested.
So Chris Welton Live, chriswelton.live is my website, and that's got everything on there. My podcast is there, my speaking. If you're interested in hiring a speaker or whatever, it's got all the stuff there. You can DM me and we can have those conversations as well.
Yeah, man. I'm so grateful. I had personal testament. I mean, myself, my business partners, we started working with a coach a couple years ago, and man, I can't tell you, even if you looked at the objective data to where we started versus where we are now, but our life has improved. I mean, we've mixed it with fitness, all this stuff, but I'm just such a believer in if you find the right coach, it's limitless, man. And you're a walking testament that what you've done in your own life. So,
well, I mean, I love coaching D1 athletes. Like, those are my favorite people to coach. So just because I don't have to explain why coaching's good. You know what I mean? So
and you know what's funny is, like, to that point when I got done with school and I got done playing, I was like, man, like, I want somebody to kind of light into me, man. Like, I feel more uncomfortable when I'm not being coached. Yeah. Because I was always trained, and we're trained as athletes. Like, you don't want to not be being coached, because that means you're kind of out of the circle. Yeah. If the coach is still talking to you and he's still interested and he's still screaming at you, that's a good thing. But in business, a lot of times that is not the case. In a very politically correct world, that accepted coaching isn't as common.
Yeah, and you're also, what you deal with today is, unfortunately, have a big gap in leadership in companies. And there's a guy named Andy Elliott. I don't know if you know Andy or not, but so Andy, I won Jordan to Andy, and
I saw that on the podcast feed. Yeah,
and we talked a lot about the gaps we have right now in leadership and the salespeople in companies. It doesn't work right now because the leaders haven't done what they needed to do to help the people. And coaching is something it's a great investment for people to jump in and do. And, it's changed my life. I've been coached since 2005 on the business side. Mm-hmm. And think about it. If you're an athlete, you didn't work as hard unless the coach was on you. Come on, be honest, right? Come be honest, right? Doubt. Did you run those extra sprints when he left early?
Never.
No, you did not.
Nope.
Right? So it's the same with business, right? Yep. And it's the same with life in general.
So. Yep. Amazing. Well said. Chris, thank you so much. We'll wrap it up here, man. Enjoy the lunch with your family. And,
I will.
I can't wait to have you back.
Okay, man. My pleasure. Thank you so much.